And ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy has more on that. So, Mick, a U.S. official says there are some minor details to be sorted out here, but that Ukraine has agreed to a peace deal. So what do you think are the key points in this plan?
So, Dan, to start with, it's a good thing that we've gotten to a peace deal that at least some officials are saying that Ukraine agreed to. That means it's a substantial shift away from the 28-point plan that originated this. But I think the biggest sticking point we just saw President Zelensky said, and that is actually legally recognizing land that Russia unlawfully took as part of Russia. That would not only be a very hard pill to swallow from Ukraine, and they would have to have a referendum on it. It would essentially send a message that if you can take land, then you can take land and be recognized for it. And that sends the wrong message to Russia. And I'm sure our European partners, in addition to Ukraine, would have a big problem with that.
U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll is meeting with a Russian delegation today. What do you think it'll take to get Russia on board with this plan?
So I'll start with it's somewhat unusual that the Secretary of the Army be working in this diplomatic capacity. This is usually a very senior State Department special envoy. But that said, he's obviously a very competent individual. So I think he's really going to come up against Russians' understanding that as long as they can keep taking terrain, they're not interested in a ceasefire. So it's unlikely that they'll accept this new revised 19-point plan. That likely require pressure in the form of significant sanctions, releasing frozen Russian assets, and improving more long-range weapon systems that Ukraine can use so effectively to target Russia's energy infrastructure, which supports their war. So until they see more consequences to not having a ceasefire, it's likely Russia will continue this. They'll have many negotiations. That's totally fine with them, but they'll keep fighting, I think, until they believe it's not in their own interest.
And French President Emmanuel Macron says Russia is the only country that doesn't want a ceasefire. How much influence can European leaders have on these talks?
So they have really stepped up their support for Ukraine, and I think that gets them more credentials, if you will, when it comes to how this comes to an end. And the coalition of the willing, as they call them, which includes France, the UK, Germany, have already said that they'd be willing to send in forces over their reassurance force, if you will, to be able to be in the buffer zone to make sure Russia doesn't just start the war again when they find it advantageous. So they are willing to do that. That gives them a lot of credibility in my book to have a direct impact and influence on these negotiations. In addition to that, they are, of course, the closest neighbor to Ukraine. Poland is right there and is a NATO ally. So NATO should have a big say in this, and they should not stay on the sidelines.
All right, Mick Mulroy, always great to have you. Thank you.